Hi, everyone. I think I have the task of trying to get you back from break. Hope everyone had a nice break and is having a nice day. This is the panel on building partnerships for when systems fail. And so we're going to talk both about systems that fail and partnerships and how those partnerships can come together and improve our chances to, first of all, keep systems from failing, and second of all, deal with them as they fail. I'm Bob Kolaski. Currently, I'm the Senior Vice President for Critical Infrastructure at Exeger. Exeger is a third-party risk analysis, risk management company. We do a lot of work on supply chain analytics, which is near and dear to my heart. Spent a number of years at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and its predecessor, most recently working with Elena and running the National Risk Management Center over there. And so I'm excited to be here. I love a good public-private partnership conference where last year I was on the public side, this year I'm on the private side, and I think that's probably true for a number of you, that you've had exposure on both sides of the public-private divide. In terms of who's on the panel today, Elena Clark, who's at CISA. She runs the Stakeholder Engagement Division and is a longtime former colleague, has been at the department for a number of years. Matt Hayden, another former colleague who's currently at GDIT, and I'll let Matt talk a little bit about what he's doing. Doug Baker at FMI, the Food Institute, and Penny Nefaris, who's with JetBlue. And please stay to the end because Penny is going to make it worth your while to stay at the end. So let me go with a little bit of an icebreaker here. I want to learn a little bit about what your roles are in dealing with system risks that could be systemic and partnerships. But let's do it in the lens of what risks are you really spending your time thinking about? At CISA, when we were working, we had a risk register that had 5 topics. Climate change, cybersecurity, supply chain risks, terrorism risks, pandemic risks, and a lot of the work that spent my time in government and still spend my time thinking about are those sort of risks. Those are the things that could cause systems to fail. So maybe I'll start, Elena, with a question on, how are you thinking about those risks? Which one is top of mind for you, and what are you doing day to day to address mitigating those risks?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for having me. So I think I'll start with cyber. So I think this, especially in the current environment that we are in after the past couple of years with COVID and going to a completely virtual environment, and now we're back to more of a hybrid environment, current geopolitical tensions that have been ongoing for almost 8 months now with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then also adding on to the past couple of years, you've got cyber actors that are watching this environment with everybody immediately going to virtual, the risks that come with that, maybe not everybody being completely prepared to go to virtual, and exploiting those vulnerabilities and exploiting those entities, whether it's small and medium businesses or our state and local partners, and kind of going after them as well. So cybersecurity, I would say, has been a top priority. I know you heard the director talk about it yesterday, and the secretary talk about it today as well. So that is one area that I myself am spending a lot of time with our private sector partners, with our state and local partners and others on at the agency.
Matt Hayden. So just a quick intro. My job at GDIT is to be both a cyber evangelist and a cyber explainer on both sides of the fence. So I actually love what I do. At the same time, when we talk about the 5 risks, of course, the default answer is all of them. But I'm going to cheat and use 2. When we look at supply chain and cyber, it's both. We, as a cyber offerer, want to make sure that we eat our own dog food. We're working really hard to make sure if there's an advanced solution, we're showing off. But we can't do that if any of our suppliers are our weak link. So we have to dig down, and luckily now that there are software offerers that give us that visibility into 3rd and 4th, even 5th level supply chain, we can communicate with all of them and say, hey, this is our expectation of what cyber is, because we can't have a bad day. Because we have a bad day, our customers have a bad day, and our customers are Uncle Sam. And so we have a big challenge on our hands. So cyber gets our primary focus, but we don't get to just look in the mirror. We have to go through our full supply chain to do just that.
Doug?
Yeah, hello everybody. Good morning. Doug Baker. I'm with FMI, and we're a national trade association of food retailers and product manufacturers. So I want to say E, but I know everybody's going to go supply chain, right? It's the closest thing to the consumer, and it's probably what's been above the fold on every newspaper for the last 2.5 years. And the thing that we were challenged with running into the pandemic and then continue to be is that we built one of the most efficient food supply chains in the world. Just-in-time inventory systems were fantastic for a lot of reasons, keeping costs down, reducing food waste. And then we ran into this buzzsaw that required us to have a just-in-case inventory system. And so we're spending a lot of time as an industry really talking about how do we get somewhere in between. Because just in case, you're going to see a whipsaw effect come this holiday where retailers have just purchased and purchased and purchased, and now buying is starting to decline. So from a pricing standpoint, that'll be a benefit. From a waste standpoint, that's not going to be so great. So for us and several of our members, which are single store operators up to Walmart, Amazon, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, it's really talking about how do we build this resilient supply chain that has the ability to adapt to the many influences that we're currently feeling, whether it be cyber, food safety, food protection. We have a lot of bad actors that find their way into our supply chain, and I could give you some stories over a drink sometime. They're pretty amazing. But it's never ending. So I'd still go back to E, but supply chain is consumer facing.
Good morning, everyone. Penny from JetBlue. So our team does all the crisis planning, exercises, and response. And so I'd say maybe corporately what we're focused on, and then also industry. So corporately, I think about our business partners. I think you're hearing a theme, right? And so we may do everything we can to be as resilient as possible, but you're just as weak as your weakest link out there. And so we've sat at the table with several business partners that are like, we've never been asked to do a disaster recovery test. Why are you asking us that? So that's a big focus for us from our BC disaster recovery team. From an industry perspective, I think about infrastructure and just our airspace and the ability to handle more flights and more planes and how fragile it is, as well as with workforce, right now, some of the challenges that we're up against. So some of it is corporate and some of it is industry, but we're all laser focused on all those topics.
Great. Well, thanks. And at this point, it's not a controversial statement, and it won't be for this panel to say partnerships are part of the element of addressing the risks of concern. I mean, interesting couple, you talk about partnerships in terms of actually a business relationship and partnership. It's more than a friendship, it's a business relationship too. I'm interested, let's dive a little bit deeper from each of your views on what makes a successful partnership. What are the elements of a successful partnership? How has your thinking evolved about that over time as you tried to cultivate these partnerships for these purposes? And,
I'll jump in. All right. So the easy answer is an outcome that both parties value. And when it came time to talk about why not share cyber indications, you've got a thing on your network you've seen, it may be bad, you're worried about telling someone else because you don't want to let somebody know that something's bad on your network. That is an important value add to a whole community so that no one else has to feel that same way, and also has the ability to see that in their eyes and to prevent it from their network. So information sharing has to have that all boats rise together mentality, and without that, we have a challenge on our hands. So when we look at successful partnerships, like the work that's going on in CISA, like the work that we're seeing out of all of our agencies that are talking to us, we have to make sure that the outcomes of that partnership are where we see where both sides want to go. It can't feel like a regulatory environment, even if it is a regulatory environment. It has to feel like we're looking out for all of our necks, and that's where it really lends itself. And that also spends its way down into the communities where our industry partners are working, because when we talk to local cities and all the way down to the municipality level, they want to make sure we're just as successful as they are. And so it's that common outcome, common values that really shares and makes it successful.
The one thing I would add to that, which great answer, is I was thinking trust and transparency. Especially within our industry, everybody's a competitor of somebody. But in the importance to be able to do that data sharing, you've got to build that trust and that transparency in order for you to be able to make actionable results out of those data points. We, at the beginning of the pandemic, as one example, food service, right? We saw it shut down completely. and grocery retail was struggling to keep up. And so we immediately reached out to the International Food Distributor Association and started working with them to start moving that food service food over to retail. And it took a lot. It took, waivers from FDA. It took repackaging. It took turning lines over so that we could get that food to where it needed to be. And we weren't 100% successful, as everybody saw on the TV, but we were able to divert a lot of that food. And prior to the pandemic, you would have never seen a grocery person and a restaurant person in the same room, let alone sharing labor, sharing trucking, sharing facilities, buying from each other. So it was sort of trial by fire, but trust and transparency really sort of drives that.
Elena?
And to add from the CISA perspective, and I apologize, I forgot at the top to actually say what I do at CISA. I'm our Assistant Director for Stakeholder Engagement, so this is really at the heart of what I'm doing every day, whether it's with the 16 critical infrastructure sectors, with the directors, boards, and councils, with our international partners. So this is basically the foundation of what CISA is built on. It's a voluntary partnership, so it's built on trust. The other thing that CISA has is about 500 to 600 field staff. So they're in the communities because this is not happening completely out of DC. So we need to have our staff building those relationships within the communities with you, with your companies, to make sure that there is that trust there. And I think one example of how we really operationalize this was through the work that we did through our Shields Up campaign over the past 8 months. Before we came out with Shields Up, we were engaging with industry and with our state and local partners, talking with them about what we were seeing and the concerns that we had about what would potentially materialize. And because of that trust, they were able to make operational changes, and then we were able to go out with Shields Up. So it's a great example about the trust that we built and how we were then able to operationalize that with our partners.
Can I ask you a quick question, just because I'm interested, and I know you don't hate me. Then tell this question. Stakeholder Engagement Division, we're at a partnership conference. Do those words mean different things, stakeholder and partnership, or are they, in your mind, synonyms? And any thought on why you chose to lead with stakeholders?
I came into stakeholder, so I don't know if I always enjoyed stakeholder because I like partnership better, but I think they also mean the same thing because, quite frankly, it has to be a partnership. There has to be trust. But yeah, I came into the name for stakeholder engagement after CISA created it.
Good. Okay, Penny, any thoughts on what makes a successful partnership?
Yeah, so, I mean, we've heard it over and over again. This is the time, not in the middle of a crisis is really hard to develop that relationship. And I'll just give you an example. We're planning a company-wide full-scale exercise, right? We're simulating an airplane accident. We are partnering with Providence, Rhode Island Airport. Anyone and everyone can come. So we are reaching out to the police, the hospitals, the Red Cross, anybody that can learn from this. Was at an MIT course on Monday, and the Coast Guard was one of the students in the class that I taught at, and was like, can I come? Of course you can come. And so, again, making those relationships and learning from each other so that if the crisis does happen, we've been there, we've been at the table, we've had the talk, we worked through some of the challenges. That's incredibly important. So from a private sector standpoint, getting as many players to play with you or engaging in your exercises or you engaging in them is critical. Like, it's a key part of our program.
So I like that answer a lot. How have you thought about, and do you lose any sleep over in the new hybrid environment we're all working in today, some of the less, fewer opportunities for in-person contact, fewer opportunities to be in the room together? Is it just a matter of different technical solutions to the same things we were doing, or are you concerned that maybe there won't be many human-level partnerships while we are operating in a hybrid?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our pilots still show up, which is a good thing. No, so but I think from our standpoint, the connection can be virtual, right? Teams has been a great substitution, but now that we are a little bit more in person, we have been driving up to meet people, in person. I think there is something to that connection. As far as our capabilities and response, it's still in person. Like, we need you in the command center. I can't have you running this crisis from your bedroom. So, so from that aspect, it's still in person and engagement. But it is an interesting formula because I think it does allow for what capabilities can you do remote, and it does help from that aspect, right? Are there capabilities that could be done remote and help your plan?
Can I add to one thing that I've kind of thought about coming into this role? It was 100% virtual, and we're finally getting back to a hybrid environment. And it's great on the virtual side because I've connected with individuals and entities that I might never have connected with before. But the concern I have is it doesn't replace that in-person connection. And I personally like more, smaller, intimate settings so that somebody can get to know me, I can get to know them, and that's really where the trust is. And it's not always those conversations about work, but it's getting to know them on a personal level. So for me, I really want to get back out there and start to meet individuals and companies in person because you just can't replace that.
Elena, in your earlier answer, when you're talking about Shields Up, CISA's campaign around cyber defense in the face of the Russian attack on Ukraine, you used the word operationalizing the partnership. And that's always been, I think, a goal, is to take these partnerships that Penny talked about that are established and make sure that in the moment where you actually have to work shoulder to shoulder, you operationalize the collaboration. Where are we generically in terms of have the partnerships you've been involved in? I mean, Doug, you were talking about new partnerships. Have they been operationalized? Is that no longer something that we have to say is something for the future? But we have all at this point operationalized the partnerships we care about.
So I think the past couple of months really tested the relationships that we had on a couple fronts. And the director mentioned this and the secretary did as well. But the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, it had just stood up. The initial plan was to do defense planning, but then Russia invaded Ukraine. And so we immediately had to shift and start working hand in hand with some of the biggest ISPs, CSPs, and cyber vendors to understand what they were seeing within their holdings, what the government was seeing, and how we could, over, as the director said, a very sophisticated Slack channel, how we were in live time, we were sharing information. So we were truly operationalizing it. And not all of industry had to be a partner of JCDC to have that reduction of risk at scale, because we were then able to share back out to the entire community of partners what we were seeing. And it might not have called out JCDC for developing it, but we were really able to share back out with industry partners, with our state and local partners, with our international partners, what we were seeing, advices and steps that they should be taking on the operational side. So it was truly a test, I think, the past 8 months. And I'm really proud of what the government was able to do with industry and with our international and state and local partners, because I think we were able to protect our critical infrastructure here domestically, but also seeing what our international partners were able to do as well. It was truly amazing.
So I'll jump in and I'll give this for you to spike down later. So the national critical functions work was great. So we had CISA standing up all the different national critical functions and where they intersected and where those pinch points were. That's the type of work where you can get a lot more operational insight into the government to help them navigate some of these speed bumps that are out there. Right now, we don't have that fully mapped, I think, at least from the industry perspective. And that is where we would love to see some better operational consistency across government and industry to pull together where we can keep this one pinch point from knocking out 2-3 sectors, and what can we do to harden or make that more resilient from there. And so when we say, is the operational partnership there? It's there. It's just we haven't used those tools to really push the envelope, to really get this ahead. Because if we turn to the great staff in government, they're going to be behind the 8 ball just from an understanding of context. It's not fair to turn to the government and say, understand my systems without me telling you what my systems are. And so there's that operational relationship that exists that just hasn't been really honed to nail all those just yet.
Yeah, I would say for our particular business, they're growing, they're improving, and we're finding new ones all the time. I would use IDA as an example. Some of the challenges that we still find is it's really important to get a grocery store up and running again as quickly as possible. Right? We don't really want FEMA dropping a pot in a parking lot of a grocery store that's actually open. So understanding, what is happening in the immediate impact area and surrounding impact area has been something we've worked on for several years with the MBOC and with All Hazards Consortium having a cross-sector partnership with telecoms, comms, electric, fuel. The other big challenge that we found during IDA was fuel. right? So if the grid's down, the grocery store's got to run on a generator. There's 36 hours basically before you got to refuel that, and then finding the fuel. So does diesel fuel, do you save it for the trucks, for the utility trucks? How do you separate that? Regular fuel, you got to have employees come into the store and work the store. But if they're waiting in a 3-hour line at a gas station to get fuel to be able to go to the grocery store to work it so people can come and buy food, it's a little bit counterproductive. So to your point on pinch points, we still have some that we're working through as an industry, but we do believe we've got the right people around the table and having the right conversations and building those roadmaps and those muscle memories. I've always said your body can't go where your mind's never been. And so we exercise it and exercise it just so that we can, when it finally happens, we might get there a little bit quicker.
Penny, I'm going to bring in the iPad question. It did pop up, so I'm happy for that. So score one for me facilitating as opposed to the last facilitator. And thank you to the Chamber Foundation. So you're talking about pinch points, and I think this is a good segue into this question. Which systems would you say are weakest, and what are tangible ways businesses can bolster the protocols and supply chains today? From JetBlue's perspective, do you see any weak systems out there that you'd like to see somebody else working on? Because I know you're taking care of your own systems.
You know, there is obviously a lot of effort for next gen and getting air traffic to the next level to make our airspace more efficient. So from a bigger picture, there's that. I also just think the industry as a whole, our technology is so antiquated. There's just not a lot of companies out there who want to build a reservation system. Like, you just don't make a lot of money off it. And so you're stuck with some, providers that are just, set in 1960. And so there's definitely a lot of opportunity. I think we're moving there. We're just a lot slower than a lot of other industries.
Let me just do a solid to Matt, and maybe you want to talk to him a little bit. GDIT might be out there ready to help. Doug, I saw you jump up on.
Yeah, the one thing that I was really thinking about is during the pandemic, we talked a lot about control tower, right? Red, yellow, green on the food supply chain. There's a conversation about the administration putting an Office of Supply Chain in. It's difficult at best. On a great day, it's still difficult because of the complexity of where the data sits. So the thing that I think we can do as an industry to make sure that all stakeholders have the information they need is to find standards, consistent nomenclature, consistent formats, interoperability, so we can share the information back and forth. The communities are in place. I see Kathy sitting over there. She's got a great community, and they meet frequently during crisis and deal with issues on the moment. I mentioned all hazards. So the communities are in place, but it's everybody's got a pet duck in the game, right? And my pet duck is perfectly fine. I don't need to change it, but we've all got to figure a way to come together to say what are the basic blocking and tackling things we need to do to move the ball forward. And typically that's standards and nomenclature that you can at least coalesce around.
Pinch points, Elena?
I would say one would probably be on the workforce side, because we're all competing for the same cybersecurity workforce, whether that's state and local, the government, or industry. And unfortunately, your small and medium businesses and your localities can't pay the same as maybe the state, the private sector, or the government, U.S. government. So that, I think, is a big challenge. And how do you get the next generation interested in cybersecurity, get them trained with the right skills, get them trained on the new systems, so that we can be competitive on a global scale. So that is a big priority, which is why you actually heard the secretary, I don't think the director mentioned it, but the partnership with the Girl Scouts of America. How do you get girls interested in the STEM field, in cybersecurity, so that they will want to do this? Because you've got to start young so that they know well before going into college that this is a field for them. And so I think that is something that we need to just continue to put more attention and time into.
Thanks, Elena. So when we were talking to Rob Glenn and the team who put together the description, Rob was saying he might have been a little overwrought in his writing up the description of the panel, but he put one thing in there, somebody on his team did, that I thought was an interesting question. Does the environment present insurmountable challenges to addressing the risks? And we're all talking about hard things, but progress that's been made. Where do you see challenges that are, if not insurmountable, not yet surmounted? in terms of really being where we need to be to deal with the systemic nature of the kinds of things we might see in the future that have come up. I mean, we haven't talked specifically a lot about climate impacts and some of the huge nature. That's just going to transcend a lot of the sectors we're talking about, a lot of the elements we're talking about. Where are the insurmountable challenges, and what should we be working hard to surmount right now?
I'll go back to my last answer. I would say it's the workforce. I mean, really, that is a challenge that we collectively have, and we've got to get more students interested in the cybersecurity field, because if we don't, we will not have the workforce to support these systems and these networks and be able to help secure them from a CISO perspective. Our nation state actors are very savvy, and we need the workforce to protect our network. So I think that is of a major concern, and we definitely need to be investing more in it.
And Matt, I'm sure GDIT, and you share, I know you share some of that same perspective. What do you, let's go further. Education matters, encouragement matters, but what else sort of on the business side can businesses do to help create the workforce of the future?
Well, first off, I'll say, as a dad of 3 daughters, I've become the cool dad in my family. So my wife is an attorney, I'm the cyber guy, so I'm doing my part. But at the same time, when we talk business challenges, it's a bigger issue about our actual C-suite really valuing, like, this is the workforce to develop. Because when you start at a large corporation, that no matter whether you're making submarines or you're making private jets, you have to have a cyber workforce, but you're in competition now with what the manufacturing demand or what they consider their primary reason for existing is. And we have, luckily over in GDIT, our business is cyber. So we have an awesome leadership team that's dedicated on this, participate in Girls Who Code, have an equal evangelist in our president. But the problem we find is that when we go outside of that cyber bubble, saying you needed to help us get this cyber workforce, they see it at the expense of another marketing officer, another human resources officer. They say, look, there's not enough people filling the jobs we've got for everything. So workforce is a challenge, but it's also a mentality that we have to fight. The same goes for cybersecurity budgets and cybersecurity empowerment across non-traditional cybersecurity actors as well.
Doug, you brought up workforce in our prep call, but I think not so much thinking about workforce from a cybersecurity skills, but other elements of the workforce. So maybe we'll pull in some other challenges associated with having the workforce necessary to deal with these potentially insurmountable challenges.
I mean, if you look at all of the issues that you saw in a grocery store on a store shelf, 9 times out of 10 you could trace that back to a human capital shortage. You know, whether that was because they were out with the virus or they've left the industry altogether. So, you know, workforce is a big topic for our industry and a big need for our industry, because at the end of the day, you can put in as much technology as you want, but it still comes back to people. People got to run the technology. I think the one thing that we see as an association and through our members is we need to do a much better job making people aware of the vastness of our industry and the opportunities that ride within it. How many people, when you ask them, what name a job in the grocery business, you say cashier, stocker, meat cutter, produce guy, right? But no. I was on a call yesterday with several IT security professionals, right? Lawyers, marketers, food scientists. It's an industry to make a career out of. And to your point, you know, cyber is becoming a bigger and bigger issue as we use technology to address workforce shortages, right? So how do we automate the supply chain? And every time you throw another piece of technology in that might be cloud-based, you're basically creating another window for a bad actor to get through. So those teams are going to have to be bolstered and grow in order to be able to manage all of that technology that the industry is putting in place, if we can't get the workforce to come back.
Yeah, I mean, obviously workforce is a challenge across the board. You know, I think we're all facing that. I do want to maybe just call out that the work that has been done in the U.S. is incredible, you know, and when I look around the table, this didn't exist 20 years ago, you know, and so I do feel really good about what the infrastructure is here and how to help us respond or get through the crisis. Where I'm more concerned about is we are global companies, and where we fly to, and it is our bread and butter, those nations can't recover, and how much resources we as private sector have to help them to get back on their feet. If a natural disaster happens, whatever the case may be. So that to me sometimes feels more insurmountable than something that maybe happens in the States, and maybe because I do have the network that I can call upon that can help.
Okay. Any other insurmountable challenges or not yet surmounted challenges? I'll patent that phrase.
I'll just add on to what Matt was saying about your C-suite and your board of directors. That's an area that CIS has identified of needing to do more outreach and engagement with, because if your company, it might not be a cybersecurity IT company, but making sure your C-suite, your board of directors understands how quickly a cybersecurity incident could take the company down, could bring you to a halt is really important. So we are trying to increase our engagement to that C-suite and those board of directors to educate them on what the questions that they should be asking, steps that they should be taking as well.
So with some of the themes, and even going back to the workforce, right? The workforce right now, we live in almost a full employment environment. So presumably you have to incentivize people to work in different things with additional resources. You're talking about, Elena, sort of getting to the board because you want to get to the board because you want the board to invest more in cybersecurity and in corporate resilience and in other continuity, other aspects of this mission. And we've had a whole thing. This stuff costs money to be better at this. I mean, I guess I'll start with the question, and Matt, I'll throw it to you, and how you're thinking about the fact we are imposing a cost to be more resilient. Is that a fair way to think about it, or am I being too bottom line-ish? And so
and it's the same way you talk about is how expensive is a disruption, you know? And so we do leverage the alter ego of resilience in that conversation. And so when we talk about security by design, you're talking about if you don't build that security in, I don't care if you're making a camera or a watch that tells you how many steps you've taken, to harden it after the fact, when you get told it has to be secure, it can be up to 10 times more expensive. So having that upfront conversation about resilience, in that same analogy, whether it's in people, whether it's in making sure our buildings are designed to be resilient with alternate options in mind, all of that has to be put with a price tag. And so not doing it, you have to do that math as well. So no, it's not free. And then yes, it is expensive. And yes, it is not a fun conversation. But at the same time, the other side of the coin is a worse day. And so that's the pitch that has to come with a part of it.
And Doug, you certainly made that point in terms of moving from just in time. Let me add on this and maybe ask you this question. I agree with the theory, Matt, what you're saying. But what does that look for a key performance indicator? What is somebody at a business incentivized down past the C-suite level to deliver performance in this area, and how can we make this part of key performance indicators in a business environment?
To me?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a great question. And every time we talk about launching something new in the industry, we talk about the culture shift that is required in order to do that. And technology is a great example of that, right? I mean, the first thing a person thinks about is, oh, you're getting rid of my job, right? So it really does talk about, you know, starting from the top and working down. For us specifically, it's always putting the consumer in the center, though. That's our key performance indicator. And the best thing for a U.S. consumer is the amount of competition that's in our industry, right? Whether it be from a brands or from stores, whether online or brick and mortar, you have choices plentiful. And so whoever is able to cater to that consumer to make sure that they have an efficient and engaging experience is the one that's going to win, whether that's technology, people, process, whatever that is.
Penny, I'll let you end this, but I also have a question here for JetBlue, so feel free to answer both. So the question here is, for JetBlue, you mentioned nations globally that you fly to not being able to recover. Are there investments you're making to help them get to the place of recovery? Are you helping other nations be more resilient?
Yeah, so for us, obviously we have a big market in the Caribbean. We actually have partnered with the Clinton Foundation to help them with some of the efforts that they're doing. Now, on an immediate scale, getting folks down into the island to help recover, whether it's response workers or supplies, you know, that's what we'll do immediate. But it goes beyond the first week or month. And that's where, you know, just partnering with the Clinton Foundation has helped us to do our part to maybe help educate or partner with helping get resources in to educate the local folks as well. So that's some of the work that we have been doing.
Okay, great. So let's see, what else do we still have to talk about? Elena, let me ask you just to follow on the role of NGOs in this whole ecosystem. Penny just mentioned the Clinton Foundation, but I know CIS is also thinking about other non-governmental organizations, and how can non-governmental organizations help be part of this public-private partnership?
Sure, so they can just reach in a completely different audience than we might be reaching. So it is so important for us to be working with them, providing them any tools or capacity building recommendations that we would have. So as they're going into different communities, whether it's in the US or with allied nations as well, being able to share those types of best practices is key. And one thing we've been doing, at least on the international front, is working with those allied nations or nations that just don't have the same capabilities that we have, and ensuring that they're getting the resources and best practices that we have as well.
And Doug, going back to trust, we haven't talked that much on this panel on the role of citizens in this whole thing. Obviously, resilience is to benefit the citizenry in a lot of ways, and NGOs certainly help with different citizen communities. But where do these kind of public-private partnerships work with citizens in an environment where citizens have lost trust in institutions in so many different places, or there's such a bifurcation of which institutions citizens trust? Us all, the royal citizens. But so if trust and transparency are necessary for partnership at one level, hopefully we can do it amongst professionals. But what about professionals with the citizenry itself?
Yeah, I would go to an example. Several years ago, 2014, we kicked off a program called Smart Label. And it was because of the eroding trust from consumers in big brands. And so Smart Label today is a digital platform that brands can share more than can ever fit on a package to the general citizen and general consumer. So that's one area, is that brand reputation and trust that company stands for something, whatever that be. The other one is one that we're sort of experiencing today, unfortunately. Anywhere people gather in a public place is under assault, and our grocery stores are under assault. And the biggest concern that we've got is, if you think about a small town in rural America, the community center is the grocery store, right? People, if you can't get your information on your small computer in your hand, you're going to go where people gather, and they gather in grocery stores. And so for us, it's also making sure that trust doesn't get eroded, that we won't provide them a safe place, no matter whether it's during a crisis or the skies are blue. And so it's what is the role and responsibility of our industry to make sure that we communicate what that looks like.
And Penny, certainly parts of airports aren't the most fun environments right now, and there are other aspects of aviation. So how do you think about sort of the distrust of citizens in your industry and the frustration that is being manifested, not necessarily on JetBlue or the airlines themselves?
We're never delayed. Yeah. So
I tried.
It is such a tough time in the industry right now. I'm an aviator myself and have been with JetBlue, one of the founders, so been with it 23 years. And to see what's happening, it's not because we want to run it like this. Like, this is not the business we want to run. It's just the challenges that we're up against that we have never had to face before, right? So some of it's workforce. You counted on crews to pick up extra hours, and now they don't pick them up anymore because they've learned to do less, more with less. So I think there is a little bit of a reset. Technology definitely takes a place in this, in that customers can help self-accommodate themselves a little bit better. But there's also climate, right? Like the storms that we're facing, or the weather is forecasted for no storms, and now we have a crazy pop-up storm in New York for an hour that just shuts us down because the ramps are closed. So the industry is definitely, it's a growing, we're growing through this. I think we'll become better and stronger, but it is a tough time, and I apologize if we ever canceled your flight or delayed you for several hours, but we will get better.
Thank you. Elena, do you want to apologize on behalf of TSA, or you?
No. No, one thing I wanted to flag is, so we were thinking about this going into October for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is why our theme is See Yourself in Cyber, and making sure that the individual understands that you have a responsibility as well. But also to your point, different entities should be delivering messages. Not everybody is going to listen to the government. So as we go into this increased public awareness about cybersecurity, what is the message industry can help to push? What is the message that NGOs can help to push? And what are the ones that government should help push? So this is something that we're going to be working on. It's a top priority for me, kind of closing out this year and going into 2023. But that's why for at least October, it's going to be See Yourself in Cyber.
You got a ready audience. You want to pitch the Cyber Summit, CISA Cyber Summit?
One thing for October is we want to get the director, this actually goes to the trust, we want to get the director on the road. We want to get her out of DC and into the communities. So you will definitely see the director out and about a lot more across the country in the communities, participating in events, and then potentially CISA, I don't want to get in front of her, we'll have events as well. But that is just trying to expand and kind of get out of our normal engagements with partners here in the DC area.
I want to save a second for Penny at the end. So Matt, Doug, quick one. What, a year from now, what do you want to be saying on stage that's changed in the last year?
I want to say that we've joined your Slack channel. I want to say that that we have better operational context on the things we touch, that we as an industry have done more. And so I don't want to just stand here and say, give me things. I want to say, I hope that we have done better to facilitate some of those pinch points.
Doug?
Yeah, I think for me, I want to be able to tell everybody that you can buy toilet paper whenever you need it.
Amen. No flight delays and toilet paper on demand. So that's a goal. Penny.
Yep. So now's the time to raffle our final pair of JetBlue tickets. It is not Spirit, in case you've heard the news, but this is JetBlue. Not yet. So Casey White from Guidehouse. Are you here? Is she? Oh, hi, here. Yeah, congratulations.
Thanks to JetBlue for that, and let me just thank the panel. You're good, right? Yeah. Okay. Thanks to JetBlue for that, and thanks to the panelists. Please give them a round of applause. Elena, Matt, Doug, and Penny. Great to be with you.